There are certain ideas that as you become healthier, become more self-evident. There are other thoughts and thinkers that as you become healthier and stronger and better, those ideas just start to fall apart. However, Carl Jung is filled with ideas that as you become more whole and integrated, these words only get more valuable, more deep, and filled with more wisdom. Carl Jung is the godfather of Shadowwork. He coined the term shadow, and pretty much everything that we know about Shadowwork came from him. So I want to share with you my top 10 favorite quotes from Carl Jung that illuminate the path for shadow integration. Number 1, that which you need most will be where you least want to look. And this is a very confronting idea for a lot of people, because a lot of people on some level have some kind of an intuitive understanding of where they least want to look. And so when they find out that which they need most is where they least want to look, it sends this immediate thing of like, fuck, I know what that is and I really don't want to do that. And so why is this so important? I had so much repressed rage that it was basically starting to swallow me whole. I was becoming a rage monster that wanted to fight and kill things pretty much 100% of the time. And it was so scary for me that I actually considered ending my life. I thought I had to. When I heard this quote, that which you need most is where you least want to look, I was like, I know exactly what that means. I had to look at the part of me that I thought was going to destroy my life, the place I least wanted to look, which was all of my repressed rage and anger and hatred and all the things that I thought were destroying my life. However, once I took a look at them, I realized that that was truly the medicine I needed. The reason I was so angry all the time was because I was letting people take advantage of me. I was letting people walk all over me. I was letting people emotionally and verbally abuse me without doing anything about it. And so all that anger that was meant to tell them to back off and not treat me that way, it was getting to a boiling point because I wasn't willing to express it. The reason it got so big was because I wasn't willing to express it. So when it became time to finally look at it, I was terrified. However, it was exactly the medicine that I needed. By processing all the anger, I started to realize all the things that were making me angry, and I was able to start setting boundaries and able to have the right conversations. So not only did the anger go away as a result of doing this, but the things that were making me angry in the first place stopped happening because I set up boundaries. I was so afraid of this part of myself that I was willing to end my life so that I never had to look at it. However, being willing to look at it literally changed my life, gave me my life back, and is the reason I get to be here and share this with you. Number 2. If you follow that which is most alive in you, it will lead you to God, even if it doesn't seem like it. Now, this is my actual favorite quote of all time. If you've watched all my other videos, or pretty much any of them, you've probably heard me say this quote more times than you care to hear it. This basically outlines the path of self-actualization, or as Carl Jung called it, individuation. The process of becoming a unique, integrated, whole individual that gets to collaborate and give to your society and your culture and whatever else. The way to do that is by following that which is most alive in you. And so when he talks about God, he's talking about the self with the capital S. So when he says, when you follow that which is most alive in you, it will lead you to God, what he's saying is that that aliveness in you comes from a place that you can't choose. It comes from a place that is truly authentic to you as an individual. And if you're willing to follow that sense of aliveness, it will lead you to your truest self. And the last part of the quote is often what I consider the most important, and he says, even if it doesn't seem like it. If you follow that which is most alive in you, it will lead you to God, even if it doesn't seem like it. Now, this is so important because when we try to connect to our true selves, a lot of that is buried. We've told ourselves that we can't do certain things, right? Like certain interests, certain things that bring us aliveness. It's like, oh, they're not big enough. They're not altruistic enough. They won't make us enough money. All these reasons to not embrace that which is truly alive in you. If you are willing to embrace that which is truly alive in you, it will turn you into your truest self, and it will turn your entire reality into a reflection of that truest self. So like, yes, you may have to have some sacrifices, you may have to face some scary things, you may have to take some risks. However, in my own personal experience, all of that has been well more than worth it. So if you follow that which is most alive in you, it will lead you to God, even if it doesn't seem like it. Scary trip to go on, but I can't find a better one. Number 3. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Now this kind of builds on the last quote, right? Because it's like, that's the path to help you become who you truly are. But this kind of hints more at what it's like to live as who you truly are. So many of us walk around with depression or anxiety or some kind of other experience that just makes our experience of living feel kind of shitty. However, once you integrate all those things and you just become the embodiment of your true self, your inner world becomes calm. Your inner world becomes peaceful. It becomes a warm, loving, nurturing environment where you're constantly encouraged to go do the things that you want to do. When you fail, you're loved. When you get a vision, you're encouraged to go pursue it. And when you make a mistake, you're encouraged to fix it in the most loving and compassionate way possible, because your entire inner world has become a loving and nurturing place to exist. And I cannot tell you how worth it is to get there, no matter the amount of work, fear, or pain, the risks you have to take, whatever the fuck it is you have to get to do to the place where your inner world is calm and peaceful and clean is worth everything. So yes, the privilege of a lifetime is being able to be who you truly are. Number 4, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. In my own personal opinion, it has 2 meanings. The first meaning being that in the early stages where you don't even really start integrating yet, most of us cling to what we believe the light to be. And as a result of clinging to the light, the shadow gets bigger and bigger and bigger because it's growing outside of your awareness. It's growing because you don't want to look at it. You're clinging to the light. You're holding on to this shit for dear life. And as a result, all the stuff that you're repressing has to get bigger and bigger as a result to try and get your attention. And like it did for me, it can eventually start to fucking swallow you. The brighter the light, the more you hold on to this shit, the more you try to have this be your main feature, the more everything else is going to grow in your shadow, outside of your awareness, start causing problems for you and potentially swallow you whole. Now, the other meaning that I like for this is one that you have to take after you've gone pretty far into the integration process. People seem to have this idea that like at a certain point, like you don't have a shadow anymore. They seem to think that like once you hit this point of total equilibrium, that there's no more shadow anymore. I don't know where the people got this idea. As you get stronger, as you get bigger, as you become more powerful and more integrated, your shadow has to become sneakier to try to get you back where it thinks you need it to be. Because here's the thing about the shadow. It is you. It is as smart as you are. It knows your strengths. It knows your weaknesses. It knows when you're weak. It knows what you're susceptible to, and it doesn't mind playing dirty. All it cares about is keeping you alive. So if it needs to like slowly whisper things in the back of your head to try and derail your plans that it thinks are bad for you, it will fucking do that. And a lot of the times, especially because as you get more confident, as things start going your way, you start to believe that you're like special, and you start to believe that like, oh my God, I fucking hacked the system, like I'm so great. And it's ridiculous because as you start like drinking your own Kool-Aid, you can become very deluded and you can forget to be humble and you can forget how crafty the shadow is and just how susceptible you are to sabotage and all these different things. So as you grow in power, you have to become more humble, more aware, more owning of the fact that your shadow is still there. Now you're somebody that can potentially harm others because you become so powerful. Now you have more to lose. Now your shadow getting the best of you actually comes with more consequences than it did when you were lower down here. So yes, the shadow gets bigger as you get bigger as well. It has to get sneakier because there's less places for it to hide. It has to outsmart you. It has to play dirty. As you grow in consciousness and as you get bigger and bigger and more powerful, you have to become more cautious, which is why we see so many people in positions of power and abuse them. Because they start drinking their own Kool-Aid, they start thinking they're special. And especially because you get more successful, you get people kissing your ass, blowing smoke up your ass, nobody to tell you the truth anymore. So you really have to make sure that you are that own truth teller. You have to make sure that you're the one looking out to make sure you don't make any mistakes and that your shadow doesn't tempt you into some dumb shit path. Because a lot of times, as you get more successful and things like that, you're gonna have less and less people to set you straight. So you gotta be the one able to do it. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow. Number 5, beware of unearned wisdom. This one is specifically talking about using psychedelics to do your internal work. This was originally credited from a letter, I believe, that Carl Jung wrote to a Catholic priest talking about the dangers of psychedelics and all these sorts of things. Certain lessons, right? Like certain parts of your personality, it seems like they show up at the perfect time in the perfect moment. There's a reason for this. It's because they kind of build up psychic energy and your internal world starts to kind of orient, if you're doing your integrative practice, your internal world starts to orient around this thing that's starting to come up, like allowing it to come to the surface, and it goes at its own pace, it comes at its own time, and it does things in a way that is unified and in sync with your system. However, when you take psychedelics, those breakthroughs just can show up and there's no relevance whatsoever. So not only is it very difficult to integrate a realization or a download or whatever you want to call it that came at the wrong time because there's no context. So it's like, even if you do learn something cool, it's like you might not even be able to integrate it in any kind of meaningful way, which is what happens to a lot of people, which, let's be fucking real. How many people do you know that take mushrooms and acid and ayahuasca all the time, and all those things they seem to learn never get integrated in their lives? They still seem to have shitty lives. They have all the secrets of the universe, but they can't fucking do anything with it. Yes, there are a small handful of people that can take these insights and integrate them into something really, truly beautiful and wonderful. However, for most of us, we end up just getting information that we don't know how to process. Unearned wisdom. Now, if you're like me and you're kind of mentally unstable while you're getting all this unearned wisdom, it can fucking drive you crazy. I was getting the secrets of the universe downloaded in my brain when I wasn't even grounded. I was on the brink of a psychotic break and I was learning way more than I should fucking learn. And I was getting further and further out, incapable of grounding everything I was learning into reality. So I just kept drifting until I had a psychotic break. That shit is not fun. Don't do it. And so Carl Jung distinctly warns against using psychedelics to do your inner work because the breakthroughs come at the wrong time. They don't really have any context. You can see more than you're really able to, and your mind safeguards that stop you from seeing more emotion or stirring up more emotion than you know how to deal with. Psychedelics can take those safeguards down, so you can literally re-traumatize yourself, deregulate yourself, and it can take a lot longer to pull yourself out of that hole if you even know how to do that in the first place. A lot of people are doing this shit without even really any understanding of what integration even is or how to do it. So they're just drifting further and further and further and becoming less and less grounded. I know you know people like that, so don't do that. So beware of unearned wisdom. Number 6, as a child, I felt myself to be alone, and I am still, because I know things and must hint at things which others apparently know nothing of, and for the most part, do not want to know. This one's a little personal. This one hurts, I'm gonna be honest with you. As you become more integrated, as you start to face the parts of your personality that other people fear, that the people closest to you fear, that the culture that you live in fears, you become something that other people don't know how to deal with. You become something that other people fear. If you are going to become an integrated person where you're going to really integrate your shadow and really connect all the opposites into a unified whole, that means you're gonna have to look at all the different parts of your personality that everyone else is afraid of. That means that you're gonna have to be able to explore the ideas that everyone else in your environment doesn't want you to explore and is too afraid to explore. And as a result, you will start to have an understanding of the world and of yourself that literally challenges their worldview, their identity, and their sense of peace. And so what happens with this is people can really only treat you the way that they treat themselves. Or to be more precise, people can really only treat you the way that they treat the parts of you that they resonate. Let's say, politics is the easiest way to look at this. So let's say you're either a left-winger or a right-winger or whatever, right? If you're the left-winger, you probably really don't like the parts of your personality that resonate with the right. And if you're the right-winger, you probably really don't like the parts of your personality that resonate with the left. And so as a result, if there's somebody in your environment that starts asking questions that you won't let yourself ask, and if somebody starts integrating parts of their personalities and feeling feelings and looking at ideas that you're too afraid to look at, as a natural result, what you will do is treat the person who's doing that the same way you treat the parts of your personality that are trying to get you to do the same thing, which is repression, judgment, nothing good. So as a result, you will start to understand that when you embody these things, people will treat you the way that they treat themselves, and sometimes that will be really shitty. I lost a lot of friends, I lost my community, I even have my girlfriend of 4 years who I was deeply in love with look me dead in the eye and tell me that my worldview was useless and that there was nothing she could learn from me and that she was basically done with me, just because I was thinking like, hey, maybe these people that you hate so much are showing you something about yourself. Maybe you could learn something here, maybe we could all benefit from learning and embracing the opposites of our personality so that we can better understand each other and create peace. That has become a very offensive idea somehow. I've watched it happen. It's a terrible thing. And as you become someone who's capable of looking at all these ideas that scare everyone else, there will be some people that simply don't know how to react to it. And because you are, just as the quote says, as a child, I felt myself to be alone, and I am still, because I know things and I must hint at things which others apparently know nothing of, and for the most part do not want to know. You are not only looking at the things that other people don't look at, you're looking at the things that they don't want to. You are becoming the embodiment of that which they repress in themselves. And there is a cost to this. However, the wholeness that you get as a result is well worth that cost. Number 7, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This quote is basically pointing to the experience of psychological projection, and it builds off the quote that I gave you last time, which can also help you understand when someone else is embodying something that you get scared of. So when I was a little kid, I was basically your typical like hardcore left-wing punk rock guy, right? I was like, I fucking hate the rich. I hate anybody that pursues selfish things. Like, just give to everybody else. You do that whole thing. I identified with the parts of my personality that were kind and compassionate and knew how to take care of other people, but I had repressed the parts of my personality that knew how to take care of me. Therefore, when I looked out into the world and I saw anybody that put themselves first, and I saw anybody that was able to build a cool life for themselves, what they really did was remind me of all the parts of my personality that I kept down, the parts of my personality that I had judged as bad, the parts of my personality that I was essentially afraid of embracing, because if I did, I was afraid they would do bad things and cause trouble in my life. So I kept them down. As a result, anybody who embodied those things that I kept down, I saw as a threat. I judged them the same way I judged myself. And the crazy thing about it is, as I started to integrate all the rage, and I started to integrate the ability to care for myself, my judgment of those people went away. Now, obviously, there's still awful, terrible, evil rich people, and that obviously exists. However, it cleared up the idea that all rich people are evil, which is just what I used to believe and what a lot of people in the world believe now. It's just not the case. It's okay to care about yourself. It's okay to want a good life for yourself. And I know a lot of people on the opposite, where they only know how to take care of themselves, and people that are really focused on taking care of other people upset them because maybe they grew up in an environment where that wasn't safe and that didn't make sense. And so they had to focus on themselves. And so this is why I think it's so important to be able to learn from the people, especially like politically or culturally or whatever, that upset you. They are holding key pieces of your personality. Whether maybe you need to care about other people more so that you can have better, more robust and intimate relationships. Maybe you need to care about yourself more so that you can build a good life for yourself and not be so depressed and anxious and codependent or whatever the else it might be. Like, you have to care about yourself. You have to care about others. And in order to create a healthy, unified system, you have to be able to think about all these different things and integrate all of your different opposing viewpoints into a unified whole. And so if you see somebody out there that fucking irritates you, they're probably reminding you of a part of your personality that irritates you, some wisdom you haven't integrated yet, some part of your personality that you still don't love. So anytime you look out and you see judgments, specifically about superficial things, like things that people believe, no matter how harmful you think those beliefs might be, if they really upset you and get freaked out that people think that shit, look at the part of you that gets freaked out about it. You're probably gonna learn something, I damn near guarantee it. Everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. Number 8, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. I fucking love this quote because I've thought about this a lot. Because when I was first getting into shadow integration, I basically thought my mind was hopelessly broken. I thought that I was just kind of fucked and there was nothing I could do about it. I thought I was destined for suffering. I thought I was destined to go lie in some gutter somewhere and just rot away, because that's what my mind was telling me to do. That's what my mind told me I deserved. And then I started thinking about it, and I started realizing that all of my behaviors, all my unconscious behaviors anyway, were aligning with that thing. Like, they were making me do things that would lead to a path of me lying in a gutter somewhere dying. They would lead to a path of me punishing myself and being self-destructive and all these different things. And I was like, holy like, yes, all of my behaviors that I can't help but enact are all being guided by my unconscious mind. And that had me think about when people would talk about destiny and how you can't fight destiny and blah, 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 blah. Destiny is just the trajectory of your unconscious beliefs. If you take a look at all of your unconscious beliefs and then put them into action and extend that over the next 10, 20, 30 years, that's what your life will be. So if you don't conscientiously go in there and choose your unconscious beliefs, you will be brought along in the direction of your current unconscious beliefs. Now, for some of us, that's fine. Some of us were raised in good, kind, loving households where we were taught to value ourselves and our truth and our boundaries and all that sort of shit. And so for some of you, unconscious programming is gonna be a fine way for you to go live your life. You can have a relatively good time doing that. However, for those of us like me, where our unconscious programming was gonna fucking land us in a gutter somewhere, you should probably change your unconscious programming so that you can change the trajectory of your thoughts, beliefs, and actions, and ultimately change your destiny. So until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Number 9, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. Now, this is an extremely important quote specifically for where we're at in our specific time in history. There are a lot of problems going on in the world that people seem to not know how to understand or relate to or deal with, and there's a lot of problems in the world that people can't even figure out why or how they exist. And this is in large part due to the fact that they don't know the darkness in themselves. If you really knew how easy it was to get tempted down a dark path, it wouldn't be a mystery to you anymore. You wouldn't be surprised by it. If you knew how easy it was to allow these things to take your life over, if you knew how easy it would have been for you to be one of the bad people, if you really understand how the mind works, and that all these awful, terrible, horrible people that you judge and condemn and all this sorts of shit are literally just you born under different circumstances and environments, when you can really understand that if I were born in a different environment, I could have become evil. When you really understand that, everything gets demystified. You understand why people do the things that they do. You understand why you do the things that you do, and it allows you to engage with like genuine evil and badness in a much healthier way. Like a good example is one of my favorite human beings of all time, this guy named Daryl Davis. He did the opposite of what as a culture we tell ourselves to do with badness and evil, specifically in the realm of racism. Like if you say something even mildly racist that could even be construed as potentially mildly racist, you're gonna have a shitload of people jumping down your throat, telling you how bad you are, and all these sorts of things to try and silence you so they can feel good about themselves. Wonderful, great, amazing. However, how does that work on a psychological level? What happens is the person that is doing, let's say they actually are a shitty racist, right? And they say some shitty racist thing. What ends up happening is everybody jumps down their throat and they go, oh yeah, I was right. You all do suck. I am a victim. I do fucking suck. And then they go tell people, they dig their heels in more, they believe in what they were believing even more. However, like this example of this guy, Daryl Davis, what he found is when you actually just sit there and talk to these people, instead of shaming them, instead of like trying to shove their darkness into a deep dark hole, which we know doesn't work, when you just talk to them, their illusions fall apart. All of the things that they thought you were don't align with the reality of the situation. And so the reality of the situation starts to kind of percolate in their head, and they slowly start to make changes. And I've done a lot of research on specifically what helps like skinheads and neo-Nazis and Klan members change their ways and essentially become healed or whatever. And it is never shame. Just like on an internal level, if you shame your darkness, you're just gonna make it worse. You're just gonna make it darker and stronger and more evil. This also works on a collective level. And now I know it's hard and challenging because so many people have suffered because of a lot of these different ideas. However, that doesn't change the psychological reality of the situation. And if you would take a look at your own darkness and learn how to turn your darkness into light and learn how to love it so that it genuinely becomes healthy, you would learn how to transform darkness on a fundamental level. And this is one of the most valuable things you could ever learn how to do. We desperately need this, specifically at this time in our lives, because shit keeps getting crazier and crazier. And if we don't learn how to interject with some kind of sanity and an actual transformative something, I don't like the way things are gonna go. So knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. Number 10, every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. Now this quote cuts right to the fucking core, especially in our culture right now. We're really divided, we're really scared, AI's coming out. Like there's so many things to be afraid of in the world. There's so many things to dysregulate your nervous system, to create a kind of existential dread and terror, to make you feel alienated and isolated and alone. And so one of the things that we've been able to bond over is ideology and idealism and all these different things, which is why people cling to their side so much. Because if you're constantly being bombarded with things to be afraid of, you have to cling to something to give you some kind of normalcy, some kind of comfort, some kind of grounding, some kind of sense that not everything is fucking terrible. And so if you want a community nowadays, you have to cling to an ideology. You have to cling to a certain set of ideals and all these different sorts of things. So it creates a kind of addiction where you cannot let go of these ideas. You cannot let go of anything that identifies with your tribe because they will kick you out. And then you won't have a tribe. And God forbid, you might have to go and be friends with the bad guys, whoever they fucking are for you. And so like we cling to these things, not because they're right, not because they're good, but because we need something. We need some sense of connection. We need some sense of certainty. We need some sense of feeling like we belong in the world and it makes sense and there's a moralistic frame with which to look at the world that makes us the good people and tells us who the bad people are. Like these are all human universals that we fucking need. Cannot underestimate how important these psychological factors are in creating a coherent worldview. The only problem is if you're getting them just because you're clinging so you have something, your beliefs and your ideals have nothing to do with what you actually think is right. They have nothing to do with what actually makes your life work. Like the more left you go and the more right you go, that corresponds with mental illness. Like a well-integrated mind is right in the fucking middle. A well-integrated mind is able to look at everything and integrate it into a whole. So you're able to live in the environment feeling comfortable and safe with your own values, your own standards, your own true sense of self. You're not clinging to things just so you have something. If anything, you cling to ideas because you know they work. I get why people are doing this. I know the need for certainty is so strong. I know the need for community and having a coherent worldview is an absolute necessity. What I am suggesting is that you should be courageous enough to find security within yourself, to not have to cling to external ideas that have nothing to do with good or bad. Because let's be fucking real, any ideology that you're clinging to now has been created by people that do not fucking care about you, just want to profit and control you. That's it. You have to source these things from within yourself. You have to find your own values, your own standards, your own sense of integrity. What makes you whole? What makes your internal world a good enough place to live? Some place that you like to be, a place that is pleasant, a place that makes you relate to others with kindness and love and compassion. That is the thing to anchor yourself into. Outside ideologies will always attempt to try and take some arbitrary set of rules and enforce them on the internal system as if that's ever gonna work. The only system I've ever found that really fucking works is bringing the internal world into harmony and then creating your rule set based around what allows that to happen. You have to let go of ideology, you have to let go of idealism. These things don't matter in the current reality. What matters is who the fuck you are, what you really think, what you need to integrate, what your values and standards are, what gives you integrity. Live like that. And then you can fucking trust yourself. Then you can really feel like you are a whole and solid person that isn't clinging just for the sake of clinging. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. This has been my 10 favorite quotes of Carl Jung. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you take the time to really, read one, pause the video, just think about it for a whole fucking day, for a few days, and then come back to the video and watch the next one. I have been contemplating these quotes for damn near 10 years, and I continue to derive value from them. They continue to deepen my experience of understanding myself. I respect the ideas that become self-evident as you become more whole. And Carl Jung's teachings are those things that become self-evident the healthier you become. Certain ideas, as you become healthier, you start to realize that they're bullshit. Certain ideas, as you start to become healthier, you start to realize how deep they really go. And these quotes that I've given you here are prime examples of that. So contemplate these as much as you can. You will never stop getting value from them. Now, if you want me to go deeper on any of them, let me know. If you have questions, let me know. But I'm Chris Orozco. I love you, and I'll see you next time.